Alright, hello everyone and welcome back. We're going to continue along creating this typewriter here. I'm all well rested up and researched and have a pretty good idea as to what we're doing now. With the center part, I decided to go and gather quite a bit more reference. And once again, eBay has actually been probably the best place to find reference on this stuff. I got a bunch of stuff from different angles to sort of see, at some odd positions, see what's going on in here. I really scored with some of this reference that I found, so happy with that. And what I decided to do once again was sort of break it down, bring it into Photoshop and say, hey, what order should I work on these things in? I can't say for sure we're going to get all this stuff done in this part, probably not. But breaking it down into sort of manageable pieces and reference is more or less the key of this introduction. And like once I could sort of see what's going on in here, I could sort of then understand what needs to be made, and then I could break it down a little bit further. And we're in a pretty good position right now to start filling things in. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we're gonna have to do is sort of reposition this cylinder we put in. It seems to be definitely a little bit too large. We're then gonna go ahead and add in this metal support that we didn't add on the other side. Sort of build on to that, and then we can return to where we were in the previous part. One little thing that I did do off of camera was for this part here, I just gave it this red color so I know that it's two different meshes, similar to what we did for this guy here. So nothing too crazy, but yeah, like I said, I'm gonna have to rescale this, and in order to do that and sort of keep all this stuff together, what I'm gonna do is select all of this and hit Control G, which is going to put it into a group, which essentially means if we go to our outliner, which is a complete mess right now, here it is down here. We put it into this group, so all these pieces are inside of this group. And to get to the outliner, for those of you who don't know, Windows Outliner. So now we can select these individual pieces, but we can also select the group and move everything at once. So if I have the group selected and I center the pivot, I can sort of scale this in. And the reason I want to do it as a group is so all of this scales uniformly. But yeah, I just wanted to scale it in a little bit and reposition it a little bit better, just based on this reference here. Just trying to make sure that the height is okay and whatnot. It kind of seems like this height is fine. And one of the main reasons was because these parts here were sticking right through it when it's supposed to kind of be like holding it in a sense. So let's just sort of line this up. I'm talking about these two bars here. And just to make sure we can cross-reference with this, where it kind of seems like, yeah, one of those bars that's going through is sort of resting on. Yeah, cool. And just to double reference, we have this metal latch. It's going through. It's kind of resting. Or actually, if I double check that, it seems like, so we've already made this piece here and it has a bar that's supposed to be going through, but it might be this bar here. Yeah, it seems like what's sticking through here and what's sticking through here might be two different pieces. Or maybe this bar is something totally different entirely. Interesting. Let's try and find another image that sort of solves the mystery here. So this is kind of like exactly what I'm looking for, but it's just on the wrong side. I wish we had the other side to see. This is probably going to be our best bet. And it looks like this larger, thicker one is this guy here. So we should be fine in that sense. And then it has the smaller one underneath. I'm going to go ahead with that for now. And since that's the case, I kind of do want to thin this out a little bit, just to sort of match this thickness. And mirror that over here. Of course, this isn't going to be exact. And then grab this group and just sort of rest it in there a little bit more snug. And then the only thing I need to reference now is this sort of height, and make sure that that's roughly the height as what we're seeing in the reference, and it definitely seems to be the case. So now we know that this guy is slotted in where he's supposed to be, especially since we can reference it to these metal pieces, which is great. So now we're starting to get things to just really connect together, and we can sort of check this off the list. The next thing to do is make this sort of metal connector. So we have it on this side, but the one on the other side and all the references I've seen is definitely different. So that's the other 3D model, but this is a photograph, and it's much more vertical, as you can see, and then it has this additional latch sticking out off to the side. So realistically, it should be a bit easier to make. I'm just trying to see exactly what we're creating before I begin. Just because the other side has these very distinct sort of like connection pieces here. Like if I pull up this image, it has these very identifiable pieces. I guess this one has this cylinder and then this cylinder. I would imagine that's what they are. This cylinder, which connects to this piece here. Okay, let's start with that one. Cylinder coming through connects to this. So then what is this attached to? This is a different one. Okay, I guess we can start with this one, make the connector, put it up there. The other one is going to actually be what attaches and wraps around. So in that case, we are going to have to, it seems like these are in different positions. It seems like this one in the foreground right now is behind this curved piece, and then this one is in front of it. Which actually kind of works out the way that ours is laid out. We're not going to have to reposition anything because I can slide this guy under, but if I were to slide this through, it'd be clipping. So that actually really worked out. No complaints from me on that. I do want to make this a little bit thinner. Scale it in. So yeah, let's start with this guy here. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to make this piece here. We have a couple reference images for it. I'm going to be sticking to this one mainly. So we already have this shape. We're going to plug it then into this sort of metal piece that connects to the back of our hook that we made. And then this metal piece that's sticking off. And the kind of good thing about this is they're mostly connected to places that we don't really have a lot of clear vision on, which means that they're not going to have to be too precise. The thing is, based on how this is, you can probably see it from above as well. So I'm going to try and see if we can get some more reference from here. And I'm wondering if this right here is attached to it. So just going to put these two beside each other really quickly. It could be, but for now we'll just work with what we got. So we don't need these faces on the inside because we're never going to see them. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. We can select these edges and just shift right click, fill hole, poke face, and then delete that. So working here, going to grab these faces to add some thickness back a little bit. And we're going to want a sort of rectangular piece that's sticking up and I guess sort of being bolted up onto here, which shouldn't be too difficult. I also want to scale this in a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to create polygon primitives, cube. And what I'm going to do is just have this sort of piece sticking up. We'll put a bolt onto it and then just have it rounded at the bottom. So that's pretty simple to set up. We can actually just snap this to the vertex in the middle. And then this is also good for giving us sort of a sense of scale on everything, because we're going to have to snap this so it's flush with up here. I'm just moving our pivot to this front corner and then snapping it here so we know that these two faces are flush. And that tells us, hey, for this guy, we're going to have to do the same thing. So grab our pivot and snap this here. So we kind of got this shape. Pull this back a little bit more. And let's go ahead and round this guy out. So by grabbing these edges on the bottom and hitting bevel, I think we've done this a few times now, we can just bevel that out. Looking pretty smooth. So I kind of want to see again from above. We don't really have the best view as to what's going on here, except for something is just being bolted in. So for the sake of this, what I'm going to do is bring it up a little bit, extrude it up a little bit like this. And then Control E, give it a bit of a T shape, then we can just put our bolt right in there. Yeah, that should be good. I'm actually going to already put a Boolean in there because I'm going to want there to be some sort of beveling inwards around the screw, so it kind of looks like there's a hole there. So let's go ahead and add that in. I'm going to isolate this already. And we can go ahead and save, because before we do any Boolean, we want to be doing some saves just in case something goes wrong. Okay, so create polygon primitives cylinder. Just snapping this guy to the middle vert. We can actually poke face because we're going to want it to be in the middle. Snap that guy there. Give it a little bit of breathing room everywhere. Just cut it in a decent amount. We can also actually, like if we add an edge loop here, and then say we select all these faces on the inside, we can scale it in slightly so it gets a bit more of like a tapered, realistic scaling to it. And then we can go ahead and Boolean it. So I'm going to get rid of these X lines, select our main mesh, our secondary mesh, Boolean, make sure it's on difference, and perfect. Okay, clean up, delete history and base objects. I might even scale that in a little bit more. But yeah, essentially now, like I'll do a smooth preview. That's obviously not correct, but it's going to smooth things in pretty nicely. And I'm already going to go ahead and place our bolt in there. So I'm just selecting these faces and using this plugin here. I did include some bolts. If you guys do want to use those, feel free. Because like I said, I don't want to sort of be using anything that you guys can't be using. So feel free to grab those bolts in the project files and you should be good. I'm going to go ahead and use this guy here. Seems to match the reference best. Realistically, I could have been adding my bolts as I went this entire time, and I kind of probably should have been doing that, but once we go ahead to bring things into Zbrush, it should be totally fine. Just because of like how quick and easy this is. So I'm just sort of placing this in, scaling it out a little bit, and then being sure to rotate it. We don't want things to be the same really ever. And then giving it a red color just so I know that it's there and it pops a little bit more. One thing to note with this though is if I have it just normally selected, it is pretty geometric, but if I hit 3, it's smoothed out pretty nicely. But this isn't the actual geometry, so if I want it to stay like this, I'm going to have to go to Modify, Convert, Smooth Mesh Preview to Polygons, and it's going to sort of turn that smooth preview into the actual geometry, which is totally crazy and unnecessary, but just something I do sometimes for a better visualization. It also does kind of make me want to, now that I see it, pull this out a little bit, just so it's not in there so deeply. And there we go. We got that part bolted into place. So that's that. It does seem like there is some information over here. We sort of have this circle, and let's go ahead and add that in now. Let's see, how should we go about doing that? It shouldn't be too difficult. We can borrow this information, this circle here, by grabbing our smart duplicate face, centering our pivot on that. Now we have this circle to work from. I'm just going to sort of rotate it into position. And let's kind of just sort of line this up and snap it into place. So we're just trying to make this really subtle detail, which means we just sort of have to get a really basic extrusion sort of pulled out. Nothing too crazy, something like that, and then taper it in a little bit and just sort of stick it in here. So we're going to weld it on just like we've been doing with a couple other things. In order to do that, of course, we got to delete those back faces and get that on there. The scale seems to be right. Obviously, this is such a minor detail, but it's those little minor details that actually make this pop, you know what I mean? Like, it's the little things that add up. As cheesy as that sounds, it's totally true. So I'm just going to trace a hole around this, which we can then weld everything to. So yeah, we're definitely repeating a lot of techniques. If you've made it this far into the tutorial series, you probably noticed that I'm not telling you all the time like how to do really basic things like how to center pivot, how to delete history, that kind of stuff. I just sort of assume at this point you know. So we're going to hopefully continue off of that. With a lot of this stuff, as you're learning, it's just repetition. Like, it's just making more and more stuff, and every single time you make a new project, sort of forcing yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone. The last couple of projects I did that with were things where it was like very lighting based, or maybe using things that were very cloth based. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm still, even though teaching, I'm making myself or forcing myself into a bit of an uncomfortable position by doing a very complex object like this, because like, God, man, typewriters are pretty freaking complicated. Every time I look at the reference, I'm just like, why did I choose this? But yeah, more or less what I'm just trying to get at is a lot of the stuff is repeated, but if you keep repeating it, it'll eventually just burn into your memory, which is kind of how you want to have it done. And then once it's burned into your memory, you can move on to the next thing, right? Cool, so I just added in some extra edge loops, so it's gonna be fine. And now we got that little micro detail in there, which you can only see at very specific angles, but it's still important nevertheless to sort of add these things in. We're gonna go ahead and add this hook piece. So it seems to be coming off of here. Just want to make sure I'm getting this totally right. It's like a metal bar that sort of goes into this larger metal casing. Which then goes into the square piece. The square piece goes up here. We definitely have a lot of reference for it. I just find it such an odd, like, why why are they so different? Why is this such a different piece than what's on the other side? Oh well, I guess we really don't have to know that kind of stuff. Regardless, we're gonna have to make some changes to this end piece to the point where I think I might just delete the tip on it. I'm going to cap this off for now by filling hole, shift right click. Even though we will delete this face later when we are doing the low poly, but for now it's going to help us when we bring it into ZBrush, because it's going to cap it off anyways, so I might as well just cap it now. And then we can smart duplicate this face, center pivot, scale this up a little bit. I'm going to want to actually, since this is black and this is visible, I'm going to want to reverse the normals on that. And I'm just making this part here. So I'm just extruding that out. Whoa, those normals are not good. Let's invert those. So just extruded these out. I'm going to hit that with an auto smooth just so it smooths that out for us. It kind of seems like we can see the main metal bar through it, so what I'm going to do is once again grab this face, smart duplicate. I'm going to put this one back there. I'm going to use this more or less as a template because it doesn't need to be perfect. So I can just grab this face and extrude it in roughly to where the other face was. Which will then let us extrude this guy in so that when we bevel it, it gets these smooth edges inside of ZBrush. And then with this face, I guess we actually don't even need to use that. In fact, we're going to have to do the same thing on this side, so I'm going to extrude this in, extrude this in. Yeah, and the reason is so when I hit 3 and it smooths it, it's going to be kind of like that in ZBrush, but remain the same silhouette. Yeah, and then I can just sort of grab this face and extrude it out a little bit. Just going to match the reference by beveling this with a pretty severe chamfer like that. And now we're getting something like that. I do kind of want to pull this back a little bit. And in doing so, pull this back. Cool. So let's see, what is exactly sticking out of this? And first of all, we have this sort of nub, which should be easy. It then cuts across horizontally, which is also pretty simple. Cuts up, rounds around. Okay, nothing too complicated. Just got to break it down into its most basic parts. So let's start with the little nub. I do want to just sort of push this guy back in there. But yeah, the nub sticking out we can easily do just by, it's starting a little bit further back, so all we have to do is add an edge loop based on how thick we want it to be. Kind of seems about that thick. And then sort of extrude up and play with the shape a little bit. I'm actually going to start with 2 of these and have it go a bit wider. Just trying to mimic this. I guess I can keep it on. I think it goes in first, then scales out. And then something like that. Yeah, that looks about right. Just make sure we merge those vertices on the top. Thickness might be a little bit much. Seems to have gotten uneven at some point. So yeah, that seems almost right. Whoa. Whoa, okay. Yeah, I guess I can probably leave it at that for now. I do want to condense it a little bit. There we go. Got that little nub sticking out. I think we have now actually made it too small. More like that, yeah. Okay, and then we have the side piece coming out, which is great because we already made this here. It might be not quite thick enough, or thin enough rather, so I'm going to pull this back. Just extruding out this square piece. And it seems like the extrusion is just a little bit past the center of this cylinder. So let's make it about 4 of these guys wide. And then yeah, so this is the center. Let's go ahead and put it out about here. That seems to be an appropriate length. And it seems like the point of this is to put it in front of this previous hook we already made. Or maybe it is just literally an attachment, because I guess we could shuffle this forward if we needed it to be a bit forward. But this piece seems relatively simple. It is a separate piece, which means we're going to have to make it we can't really extrude out of what we've already made, which is totally fine. Just cleaning this up a little bit. So let's add in another cube. Create polygon primitives, cube. Get this guy in place. I'm just going to be selecting faces and snapping. For now, it does seem to be a little bit off center, which is good. Adds a bit more personality that way. But I'm going to add that in at the end. So it doesn't seem to be like that thick of a piece of metal. Maybe about that. And now that everything's centered, I can scale it down. It seems to be a bit thinner. Gonna snap it against there. It kind of seems like it's hanging off a little bit. I am going to be rotating it so it's a little off balance, but I want to get everything set into place first because we're building off of this piece, so everything's going to be relative to how it's currently set up. So we can do that at the end, so we don't have a lot of things depending on the sort of geometry. We want it to be as straight and even as possible for right now, so it's easy to work with. I suppose it would be easier to make this piece if we already had this sort of grip or dial in place, but it should be the same as this cylindrical piece, so we should be fine as long as it is matching that. I am noticing now, looking at this, that our scale on some of this stuff is definitely off. Yeah, this stuff is tiny. Okay. I guess the easiest way to deal with it would be to poke this face. I can put my pivot right in the middle so I know it's centered. And just scale this up quite a bit. It honestly seems like it's... because I mean, this is the loop. Again, this is the size of that. It seems like it's more this size than anything. So let's pull this back in a little bit. Once again, we know how far out it's supposed to be. We can now scale this up. And just sort of adjust accordingly. Yeah, and scale-wise, that's making more sense. I feel like I could even afford to make it a bit bigger. And then, yeah, this stuff is going to have to be adjusted. So I'm actually going to scale this guy up. Scale this guy up. Grab this group and scale it down just so it's not clipping. Just making sure everything's making sense. We have this curved piece. Okay. Very complicated, very complex. I guess what's actually going on is we have this piece here that curves down, but it seems to stop here. Like this piece right here seems to stop at this connection piece, if I'm not mistaken, and it kind of slots into there. I'm just making sure I'm getting this right, because I'm trying to figure out where does this come from, or if this is even a part of it at all. I think this is supposed to be this here, but this is attached to another metal piece, so maybe I think I have this currently wrong the way that it is. So let's go ahead and write that by deleting that. And yeah, it's going down. I'm just trying to figure out what exactly I'm looking at here, because we have this back piece that we already made. We have this front piece we're going to make, but it's slotting. Is it slotting in between them? No, it's slotting behind. It's slotting behind this first piece. This is also definitely much, much skinnier. We can start with that. But yeah, it's slotting behind this, which is definitely doable. We can definitely make that happen. I just want to first adjust for this rather quick scale change. Just throwing in a bevel there. It'll look much better when we smooth it out. But yeah, now we can take this and we can kind of just put it behind here. I'm trying to go for this. So the way that I see it is it goes behind here. It's of course capped off, so we're going to hit fill hole. And then it's very smooth, it's rounded out, and then a bolt is going through this sort of round piece into it. It all makes sense. Okay. Okay, we're starting to figure this out. We can, of course, take these faces and pull them all back. So it does look like this is pretty generously chunky. But I'm also just going to opt to snap this back. Going to pull this back a little bit. And then this, just going to make sure everything's lined up the way it's supposed to be. This is definitely wrong. Slot that in a bit more. Okay. So now we can kind of make this rounded piece. That we can extrude up. Bevel these edges on. And stick a bolt through. I feel like I've now made it too thick. But this is a much easier fix, actually. This one we can just scale like so. And then put this back where it belongs. Cool, so let's cut a little hole here as well so we can put a bolt in there. We're going to put a bolt in just like we did on this side. And then this mechanism is going to start to be making a lot more sense. This tapering also should probably be mimicked over here. Just before I forget. My music also paused. Give me a second. As much as I do love teaching, and I definitely want to continue doing this, I'm without a doubt much faster at modeling when I can just listen to music and go at my own pace. So I'm still listening to music. If I zone out, it's probably because I'm getting into the song or something, but yeah, I want to be going much faster, but I know that that's not entirely possible when I have to talk and explain things as I go. So I'm thinning this out. Thinning this out and beveling. And then thinning out this final piece. I just want the ends. There we go. Okay. It does make me curious. I just want to double check. Like, that's definitely a real piece. Yeah, it comes down. Okay. Cool. Let's keep going along then. We haven't saved in a while, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, and then same method as before. We're just going to be putting a cylinder in here. Super easy. So I'm just grabbing a cylinder really quickly. I want to make sure it is centered. Maybe a bit smaller than that. And this definitely has more edges than we need. But it's all going to be normal map information, so it really doesn't matter all that much. Sink them in a decent amount. Select the two. We can just, of course, new Boolean. Yep. Delete history and base mesh. Scale this in a little bit. Maybe pull it forward. And then I'm just going to place a bolt in there. Make it red. I'm going to modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons. Now we got another bolt in there, looking nice. I want to actually scale it down a little bit, just because I know when we smooth things in ZBrush, everything's going to shrink, so it might become a little too tight. But yeah, that should take care of that part. Now we have to actually make the connection piece. Yeah, and that's another image of the bolt connecting it. Okay, so we're definitely doing that correctly. I do want to scale this up though. It definitely needs wiggle room for when we bring it into ZBrush, but I don't think it needs that much wiggle room. These edges are also all smoothed in the references, so me go ahead and chant for them all. Right, so this piece comes out, wraps around, goes up. We've done very, very similar stuff before, so it should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to add in an edge loop, just so we have a more controlled extrusion for the thickness. I'm going to pull it out a little bit. I'm literally just matching this reference one for one, and you guys should have this file. That's why I'm not keeping it open the whole time. Extruding it up, over. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit more accurate. Seems to round out quite a bit here. Then go up, skinny out a little bit. And then of course, we're going to be massaging this all the way up. So I can already tell we're off quite a bit with our placement, but I'm just trying to get this more or less into position. So this is actually supposed to be in front of the metal. So realistically about here. So there's a couple ways we can combat that. For starters, we can pull this back a little bit more. We definitely have that kind of freedom, which is nice. But then I also want to pull the other stuff forward a bit. So I'll pull that back as far as I can within reason, matching the reference. Which is, yeah, that's already pushing it a little bit. But then I can just grab all this stuff and snap it forward. Grab that. And that should be fine. So let's just focus on massaging this out. I'm gonna, for scaling, right now set this to component just so I can scale relevant to how this is rotated. So I need to beef this up a little bit. This is definitely a bit thicker, stays thicker for a little bit longer. And yeah, just massaging everything out. So nothing I can really comment on too much for this. I'm sure there are definitely ways to do this that are a bit more efficient. But for the most part, that's pretty much the shape, and that really didn't take too much time at all. I do want to bevel this because this seems to be the most awkward transition we have. So that smooths it out, and then I'm just going to bevel these because I don't want anything to be too spaced out. And now we're just going to kind of make this hook shape. I do want to lower everything though. It seems that we've made it go a bit higher than our reference would lead us to believe. And maybe everything's out a bit too far as well. Yeah, we've definitely put everything out a little bit too far. That's definitely more like it. Let's grab this face. Extrude up so we have a little nub that we can stick something out of just to pull it towards the camera. We can then extrude the length we want. Push this forward. Push this backwards. Just kind of get the size right. And now just sort of add that curve to it, which should be pretty straightforward. Just selecting some of these vertices, rotating it. And then it's just a matter of raising the verts on the edge. And I'm just going to add in some extra edge loops to give it some more geometry to bend with. Pulling at the end so it's not a sharp fall off. And that should do it for that. It kind of seems much straighter, so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can pull everything back a little bit. I should be thinking that as soon as it's past this sort of thicker part, it's mostly straight up. So let's accommodate for that. It's mostly like, it should be kind of like that. And I can raise that up a bit. And then just sort of massage the bottom part to fit the new positioning. Okay, so I'm kind of liking the positioning of all this. I do just kind of want the curve to be lower, so I'm actually going to use soft select. I'm going to hit B on the keyboard, which is going to give us our soft select tools. If we hold B in middle mouse, we can sort of affect our radius of soft select. So a very small radius is just going to move a little bit of what's around what we select. If we B middle mouse drag a lot, it's going to soft select a lot more. So let's select until we're not really messing up the base of how things are set up, and pull this down, and that's already matching that way more. Sweet, and then B to turn it off. I'm going to set our scaling tool back to world. Get a couple last little massages in, and that should do it for this part. Cool, and then like the nice thing is that we know if we smooth it, it'll automatically soften these, and we're going to put it into Zbrush to do something just like that. Okay, so what about these bolts now? How exactly can we get that in? First things first, I'm going to want to cut this face in half. So let's, holding Shift, cut to 50%, and then add a cut up here. I'm just going to vertex snap this horizontally so we have two even faces. Poke face here, poke face here. And I'm doing this so we have vertices in the middle of each. This is important because I want to rotate this so it's a little off center. Oh, this seems to be a little bit off. Yeah, so I want to rotate this so it's off center. Because it kind of seems like all these are a little bit crooked. I also do want to make this a little bit thicker. Which also makes more sense for the connection piece. Yep. And now that we have that, we know where to put our bolts. I'm just sort of observing all the connections. I kind of think we can pull this back a little bit so it's more in tune with what's going on here. Would be more like that, I believe. And I do want to cut a hole in the middle so we have some bevel information. But first, let's focus on what we were actually trying to do in the first place. Man. Okay, sorry. I just want to soft select, pull this out a little bit so it has a bit more of a curve to it. Okay, cool. It's really easy to get carried away. But let's add in our cylinders. Let's select this vertice. Just going to put a cylinder on there. Going to duplicate it and put one over here, snapping it in place. We can actually just go mesh combine, and now we're going to boolean, so let's quickly save. Okay, select our main mesh, shift select our boolean mesh, new boolean operation, clean up, delete history and base objects. Let's go ahead and we can actually just poke these faces, and then since this guy's right here, we can duplicate and just sort of put him in there. Just make sure we rotate them though so that they're not all facing the same way, and then pull them in and out a little bit so there's some variation. Because all of them are going to be different if this was realistic, right? So now we have that guy. I kind of want to tuck everything in a little bit more. Should actually be fine. I think the actual issue is just the size of the bolts. So I guess I can show you a cool trick. I'm going to select all the faces in here. And if we have our scale tool and we go to normal, we have to select the vertices. So I'm going to go to control click to vertices. And now if we're in normal and we scale along N, we can scale things in and out along the normal. So I can scale it in like this. And we're getting some weird issues here, but that should be pretty easy to fix. Just by selecting all these faces and scaling them out. Yep, so now we can scale our bolts up. Oh, I didn't scale them from the center, okay. Okay, so that's looking more like the reference, having the bigger bolts. Yeah, it's way too easy to just think it's okay to have them small, but it's way too obvious that that was not accurately sized. So we have this connection, we have these bolts here, we seem to have this whole section done. The next piece was then to have number 3, which is this piece, which is sticking off, which comes from here, sort of goes and wraps underneath this metal piece. And then we're back here. I think I'm going to call it there. I'm going to grab a couple more pieces of reference for this guy, and then I'll meet you in the next part. This piece shouldn't take too long. I just want to make sure I know where everything's connected to before I dive in, so I don't have to look at reference for too long and keep you guys waiting. But if we look at this, it has this big sort of connection piece, which I know we have other references of that from the back view. Yeah, this guy here, which connects across. Which we can then once again look over here and see that this is this piece like right here, which is okay. So then that, wow, I'm not even sorry, I wasn't even showing the reference. Okay, let me explain that from the top. We're going to be making this connection piece, which ends here, which if we look at the back of the typewriter, is this piece that connects across with the spring. And if you look where it connects, it comes full circle and is connected to none other than that circular piece that we were questioning before. That circular piece, of course, being this right here. So after the next part, things are really going to start to be like tightly connected, which is great. It's good to know that this is all working out. I just keep thinking about how like 5 parts ago I said, yeah, we can wrap this up in about a part or 2. Okay, this is way more complicated than I thought. Either way, it's coming along. And for me personally, going through this, like I'm starting to get a much better understanding of working on these complex props and understanding how exactly to break them down, what references to be looking for, and how to sort of isolate them into their individual pieces and components. So hopefully you guys are as well. And hopefully I'm sort of conveying that information easily to you guys, and that's all being read. The thing is, I'm really trying to get through this first part because the most fun is when we're actually in Zbrush doing the high poly, and the most fun is also when we're texturing. I also really want to teach you guys how to do some good, cool baking techniques. This thing is going to be a lot of fun to bake. So I really want to get this part done. Trust me, I know it's not the most exciting, but I'm working on it. Thank you guys for sticking around, and I will see you in the next part. Have a good one.